Hi, welcome to All the Sense in the World. We have an episode today with Maya White, and she is an astrologer and a certified astrocartographer, which is a big deal. So she'll tell us a little bit more about that. We'll welcome Maya.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you. So I had wanted to interview Maya. I got some information from a friend out in California. Maya happens to be in Florida, and so am I. And I thought, what a small world. So anyway, I ended up looking into her website, finding out more about her, and I really appreciated her just openness, and also that she is a certified astrocartographer, because I have an interest in knowing about locations. So if you wouldn't mind, Maya, first just telling people a little bit about you, how you got into astrology. I mean, is it something that you wake up one day?
Okay, yeah, Joy, actually, I love to share the story of how I got into astrology, because I hope that it is inspirational for other people. So I have always been interested in astrology. I got into it when I was 14, and I actually I bought a book by Sydney Omar called, My World of Astrology or something, and I still have that book. It's so funny. I tried giving it away 2 times over the years. I mean, you can imagine, right? Like I'm, dragging these books around. Well, okay, this is one I've read, I don't need. And both times it came back to me.
Wow.
Yeah,
like given back, or you found it again?
Back. Like I both times I donated it to a lending library, and when the libraries closed, the owner was, I just happened to be there, and they were like, oh, here, this is a good book for you.
No,
right?
That's amazing.
So I kept the book. I still have it, but I was always fascinated by astrology, but I did not ever think that I could really make a living doing it. So I endeavored through, became a kind of a jack of all trades. I earned a degree in music, and I gave private music lessons, and pretty much you name it, I've done it. I sold furniture, I painted houses, I did everything. And aside from, with the exception of giving music lessons, I was pretty much either, let's say, miserable or dissatisfied in everything I did. And finally, I got fired from like 2 jobs in a row, pretty much. Or one was like, if you don't quit, we're going to fire you. And the other one was, I got fired.
Sounds like 2 is your lucky number.
And I was living in central Maine at the time, and I pretty much sat on the couch for a week and cried my eyes out, because I felt like this huge failure. And I decided that I had nothing to lose. I took out a little 3-line ad in a Portland, Maine newspaper. And a week later, I was, had a gig as a columnist for, a new magazine, a startup magazine. And I just never looked back. I mean, it was like the world just opened for me. So that's my inspirational story.
That is beautiful, and by no mistake, right? I mean, I think sometimes getting fired from jobs is a good thing, right? It opens it up. We have to go, wait, I guess I was comfortable, or I guess it's time to change. And then what? Ask some questions.
I was terrible. It was as an office manager.
Oh, that's I don't know your chart yet, but I
wasn't good at that.
It doesn't align with who you are, right? Yeah. Well, it's amazing how I know people get roped into jobs, careers that they don't feel comfortable in, but are roped into it, and it's just going to pay the bills, right? So yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting as throughout our conversation. I'll want to talk a little bit about career, because that is a big one. But I did want to ask, so when you decided to study astrology, I want to understand, so finding a book opened your mind to it, opened your soul to it. Then what did you need to do in order to truly prepare to become an astrologer? You know what I mean?
In order to write my columns for the magazine that
Sure.
contacted me, I had to really dig in and work my butt off. And seriously, I mean, I can't tell you how hard I worked and how much research I did. And in those early days, I would say books by Stephen Forrest were like my Bible. And I have a couple of other, you know, just favorite astrology books that honestly I'm still loyal to today. And I would say I'm largely, not largely, but I'm going to say I'm somewhat self-taught. I just, you know, I had to dig in and rely on what I knew. And then I started learning from my clients by doing readings. And same thing, when I first started doing readings, I would, like, you know, spend half a day to prepare, and it wasn't good enough. I didn't know enough, and it just, you know, it just grew.
So at that point in time, when you were beginning off with astrology, were there certification processes? You know, like now you can go get a certification or go take classes, and did they have that when you were studying astrology?
I'm sure they did, and I've always been a member of NCGR, you know, and AFA, the astrology organizations, and furthermore, I feel that I benefit from every class that I take, every short-term class. But in terms of going the route to do astrology, I would really, you know, my first challenge in certification was taking my test for the astrocartography certification.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was the hardest test I've ever taken.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So in regards to studying astrology, understanding it, and I love that you had to truly just experience it, apply it. It wasn't just reading out of books and hoping to absorb the information, right? You were taking clients.
I don't think it's possible to really become an astrologer through reading out of the books. You know,
yeah.
you learn by talking to people. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you really learn, like, what you might have this astrological aspect, but what does it mean? How does this translate into a person's real life?
Right. No, and that's actually a segue into this next question, because I think people, our listeners, would like to know, you know, how much is inspiration as opposed to science, right? Is there a soft, subtle balance? Or how do you work? And I think different astrologers probably work in different ways, right? But I guess you can at least speak for yourself and what you're finding works for you.
That's a really good question, and I have to think carefully to answer it, because I, of course, look at the basics, and I go by the basics, you know, sun, moon, and ascendant, and what the flow of the chart. Beyond that, I'm very much in tune with the aspects. Like I get, where I get the most from a chart is when I sit down and aspect it.
So tell our listeners what an aspect is.
An aspect is a planets that might be square or trine or sextile or in opposition. How the planets are interplaying, how they're relating to other planets in the chart. And when I do that, then I understand the flow of energy in the chart. I understand what is this person's, where's their problem, where's their gift. And that's my process. That's how I do it. And I'm sure every astrologer has their own, you know, their own process. But And then aside from that, honestly, on the intuitive level, I would say that as I spend time with the chart and I look at it and I aspect it, it starts to speak to me.
I believe, no, I believe that. So do you have to have spoken to your client or the person whose chart you're reading prior to getting those sensations? You
No.
start getting them just
Just a chart.
with the chart. That is amazing. So do charts have energy or
They have flow.
flow? Can this be taught?
Probably. I would
Yeah.
like to think it could be taught. I mean, it's as simple as drawing in the aspects and observing and
Yeah.
seeing, but again, that's a good question. I would acknowledge, I know there's got to be an intuitive layer to that.
Yeah. Well, no, and this is really important because I mean, I've studied a little bit of astrology. I'm self-taught only because when I was kind of like you, but I was a little older. So I was probably right into college, maybe 21. And I was having some issues with family, you know, divorced parents, things like that. And I happened to be in a Barnes and Noble, came across a purple book called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need to Know, or something like that.
Probably have that book too.
You probably do too. But it was the same thing for me. I hadn't asked questions about my, you know, who I am when it comes to a natal chart. I didn't know anything about that other than I knew I was a Scorpio. So, and there were always ideas about that, but I didn't. It's one thing when people tell you something as opposed to you actually researching it and trying to learn for yourself, right?
See, yeah, and Joy, I mean, that is again where there's a big difference between somebody telling you something and then you looking at a chart, seeing it, talking to the client, hearing the actuality of the experience. That's what it's all about. What's the real life, you know, taking it out of theory.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is about. And I mentioned this to people when they ask me, well, what do you believe? Do you believe in astrology? No, it's a question people ask. And I've said, I believe it's a tool for me in my life to look at, you know, how things work, how, you know, the makeup of maybe some, you know, personality traits of myself and just understanding how to maybe approach life when I have questions. But I look at it as a tool, not as a finite path, you know. But I don't know what you tell your clients when they're asking you, what should I do with my life, you know?
Well, that's kind of an easy, for me, that's not a difficult question, because when they ask me that, I always look at their north and south nodes and I look at their Saturn.
Oh, tell me. No,
That's
north
an
and
easy question to answer.
See, I didn't know that. Okay, that's why I'm not the astrologer over here. Hello. Oh, no, but that's fascinating how, so if you've already pinned down through your many years of experience and application of this, how to answer a question, you know. So say someone asks you, you know, am I going to be rich? Is that something you can read on a chart too?
I would tend to have a dialogue with them as to, number one, what does rich mean? And number two, what do you do to earn your money? And what do you plan to do? And if you want to be rich, here is how your chart would suggest you can achieve that.
Okay.
Some people might marry wealth, some people might not, some people earn it, some people are driven. What fascinates me about human nature, well, is human nature. What fascinates me is like, what is that inside of a person that will drive them? So one of my favorite examples is Dolly Parton. That woman is driven, you know, she has all the money she needs, but she didn't stop. She keeps creating and going. And so it's not about the money, it's about being a creative and fulfilled person. So I want to back up a little bit. I don't want to make it that it's simplistic in telling a person, you know, what should you do, but the chart is just vividly, you know, gives you suggestions.
I also understand that through the aspects you were talking about, people can see some of the maybe issues or doubts that might come into their life when they are trying to be motivated, right?
Of course.
So I think for me, I think astrology as well, back to kind of when I had started researching it a little, just to understand more about myself, my parents, and those dynamics, was understanding that, yeah, I'm not going to get necessarily answers from astrology, but it'll help me see a little deeper into the possibilities of who I am and how maybe my weaknesses, and it kind of confirms, yeah, Joy, you are a very sensitive person. You know what I mean? It kind of helps validate, and sometimes that's all we're looking for is a validation.
Well, the validation, but I think sometimes there are clear answers. You know?
Yeah. So when I understand, so with the birth chart, it's a time when you're born, a place you're born, exact time, right? In a day. But so with a birth chart, you see, is that reading who that person is through the expansion of their life or just in that moment? Because I know the planets are constantly moving, right? In your chart, the houses, things like that, they're moving. So how formative is this birth chart when it comes to your life?
Well, the birth chart is a matrix. I feel it's a matrix of your soul. So for example, as the soul, you have to be at a right vibrational level to enter into that birth time, into that moment of birth. So it's like a vibrational match.
That's actually really cool. So it's kind of like this might sound a little trivial, but like when you're born, you're given a name, and that is your name, and you will carry it with you through your life because of that time and place you happen to receive this name. I'm only using that because I'm trying to pinpoint. So when you are coming into the earth, and I guess expand on that a little, because I think that's really interesting for people in order to understand the power of a birth chart and the power within us, right? If we are born at a certain time and place on this earth, there must be a reason for it.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's getting into the role of, you know, spiritual advisor versus astrologer. It's funny, I had a conversation with one of my friends about that, and I do find it interesting that astrologers really, I think, come at their craft or their art, they come at it from many different places. Some people come at it thinking, oh, like I'm a spiritual advisor, or, you know, but some people don't. Not everybody does. And I have astrologer friends, for example, who don't believe in past lifetimes. I have two, and they just don't. And so I happen to, but it's been helpful for me to look at it from that person's point of view. And it's been helpful then for me with clients. Like, I don't assume that my client believes XYZ.
Okay.
You know, I don't assume that they believe in past lifetimes. Most of them do. I don't assume that they have the same spiritual background that I have. But anyway, to answer your question back on, I guess your question was about, again, back to this idea of like a soul vibration match. Yeah,
just understanding the power in it. And I'm a spiritual person. I'm fine. I'd love for you to expand on that, the idea of this, you know, coming from another place into this earth, onto this earth. And I mean, speak as openly and as spiritually as you want to. I think our listeners will be curious to know
I think it's very simple, and honestly, I don't have a lot to say beyond that
Oh, okay.
of
Yeah.
it. It really.
So if people, let me ask you this. So when someone's coming to you to find out more about their lives, do you find a lot of people are kind of at a breaking point and they're really just needing help, or is it? I guess it's different. You have different clients, I'm sure, where
Yeah, Joy, they
coming at
come to
different
me,
points.
people come to me for all kinds of reasons. You know, yes, many times they are in distress, but not always. And I don't assume that my clients are in distress. I assume that they're seeking the wisdom of astrology. They're seeking, you know, this information, this other information that will help them navigate their life.
So if someone's coming to get a reading from you, are you're such a nice person, so I'm already going to probably answer this question, but I mean, some people have no idea about astrology, right? Like they don't even know what their sun is. Do you get clients like that who come in, no knowledge whatsoever, and you're starting from square one, you know, like point A?
Occasionally, but most people have at least a curiosity and an interest in order to schedule that appointment.
Yeah.
But actually, I love working with skeptics, and I love working with newbies.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. I love the word skeptic because it's powerful, and I might need to interview one of your skeptics. No, tell me about maybe that process with a skeptic, for example.
Well, okay, so for example, let's say, I mean, this is, I'm not going to say all men are skeptics, but let's say this is the husband of one of my clients, and the husband's like a doctor and he's not a believer in astrology, right? But,
Right.
you know, she drags him along to the appointment and he goes to humor her.
Yeah.
That's a classic, I would say, example, right? The partner of one of my clients comes along, and I in that situation, I come to them very respectfully, and I'm not coming at them like I'm there to change their mind. Again, for me, it's much about the conversation.
Okay, so you're not trying to change minds, or I mean, I just feel like it would be really hard to convey the message. I mean, to me, somewhat, you know, astrology is a sacred thing.
Well, here's the thing, Joy, is, you know, if it's done right, it's so powerful that the message itself does the work.
Okay, boom, right?
You
No,
know.
yeah, no, you are right. And okay, so if you don't mind, let's move on a little bit, because I wanted to talk about the astrocartography portion of this, because that's huge. So if you wouldn't mind telling people what astrocartography is in a nutshell,
Sure.
or elaborate.
Astrocartography is a branch, it's a specialized branch of astrology that tells you where your best place is to live or travel to. And the premise of astrocartography is that the planets, as they were above the Earth, hold and put an energetic signature. The planet puts in its energetic signature on the Earth. So it's kind of this like as above, so below theory. And the process, that the modern process is that this guy, the guy who certified me, Jim Lewis, in the 70s, was able to actually develop a software program that illustrated where the planets were before the computer age. An astrologer would literally have to calculate thousands of charts to get that information. Jim Lewis figured out a way to, in one picture, show it all. And that is absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah.
That he did that. So the maps have lines that again are showing where the planet was above the earth when you were born. And it's amazing. I do it every day, and every client I talk to, you know, the information that comes out is just brilliant. And again, I rely on the actual experience. I don't approach this from a point of view of like, I'm going to tell you what it should be. I approach it like, I want to hear what it's been for you.
Okay, so let me ask you this. With astrocartography, are people using this to find their way on this earth?
Well, I wish more people were using it.
Yeah, so it's that powerful. Okay, so if you don't mind giving us some examples, because so if someone's looking for perhaps somewhere to find love, I don't know how this necessarily works, other than, yeah, if you're looking for a particular aspect of your life, and then they can find that with you.
So my best example is really my personal life, and I won't spend this whole session talking about myself, but I grew up in Colorado, and at a pretty young age, let's say, 19, I guess, I went to Maine with my boyfriend. Kind of, right? Like,
yeah.
Get me out of
here.
Me out of Colorado. I'm out of here. I'm going to Maine. And I got up there and I broke up with the boyfriend right away, but like I couldn't leave. It was so difficult for me to get out of Maine. I ended up, having children. I met someone else. I liked Maine, but I didn't like the cold weather there. And I was like miles and miles away from my family, where I grew up. And I always I couldn't understand, like, why did this happen? What just happened? I got like dug into this place I had no intention of ever going or staying. And all of a sudden now I have kids and, this and that. And I used to get the horoscope magazine, and in 1976 I saw an ad for Move Your Place, Change Your Life. It was a Jim Lewis ad. It was an early astrocartography map, and I ordered it. I got one of the first maps ever put out.
Like a paper map?
It was a paper map, the big 11 by 17 paper map. And after I learned that and I learned to understand it, it totally explained it to me, because where I lived in Colorado, for me, was a line of Uranus, and Uranus is very unstable and it's sudden change. And it was like I just got kicked out. Like I wanted to be out of there, right? Yeah. And where I went up in the Northeast was a Jupiter-Pluto crossing. My actual crossing was right on the top of Mount Washington, which is one of the highest mountains in the East Coast, in the continent. And like it was like this Jupiter-Pluto crossing. And it, again, and one of the reasons I stayed is that I had married into a pretty wealthy family, honestly. So it was like, geez, do I want to take these kids, pack it up and take them back to my crazy family in Colorado, or do I want to stay with this nice family that I married into? But for me, Jupiter is in my second house of money. Pluto is in my fifth house of children.
Oh, okay.
So that Jupiter-Pluto crossing energetically kept me there. And then as I learned to analyze astrology, this is how it drilled down. This is why.
Okay. Oh, wow. No, that's powerful. So the planets affect where you live, or the locations, right? The planets and the houses. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's more important, I think, to focus on the planets. If I get into a discussion of houses with clients, a lot of times that's too much information. I'll lose them. It's confusing, you know.
Yeah.
But just for a discussion, like a detailed discussion on astrology, I would say that. So here's the thing. It's and I feel this strongly. I do not feel that astrocartography is a simplistic cookie cutter formula. Like, oh, go to your Venus line, anywhere on your Venus line, and you're going to be happy forever. That you have to really, you know, there's counseling, counseling that goes
You
with
mean
that.
with an astrocartographer? Is that what you mean? Having someone
With the
guide you through
client.
your chart with your, yeah. No, that
With
makes
your
sense.
client.
Well, so if you don't mind, I'll share with you because at one point, well, I have this love for Italy, and I found astrocartography, or it might have been relocational astrology. I think there's a difference.
Same thing.
Okay,
Similar,
same thing.
really.
So I found that, and I saw that my Saturn was going right through Italy, and I asked someone, it wasn't well, they were an astrologer, but they were like, no, that's bad. Saturn is bad, you know, and it's through my ascendant. And I was thinking, and I remembered reading a small little clip that said, if your ascendant is in Saturn on this particular, you know, this particular line means it's going to be difficult. And anyway, and I'm thinking, but I love Italy, so why wouldn't this work for me? But once you read, like you said, you read into it, and I really had to prayerfully, I'll say prayerfully, because I needed to spiritually know what this truly meant, rather than just what's on the paper, or what, you know, what.
Right.
Yeah. So digging deeper, you know, I think it's in my 7th house, Saturn, Italy, or not Italy, ascendant is Sagittarius. And it started to make more sense to me. And it's in my 7th house is in Gemini. So.
Well, it would have been your Saturn descendant if you have in your, well, I think.
Yeah, 7th house, right?
Yeah, would be descending.
Okay. So yeah, so I still don't know what that means per se, but I feel like there's something about Italy, and anyway.
Well, Joy, I mean, I think that's a good, you know, starting point in again saying, like, it's not a cookie cutter thing. Like, it worked for you, right? And maybe you don't live there, but I would guess, I mean, I'd have to look at the map and the chart and everything, but Saturn in the 7th sounds like a past lifetime deal to me.
Oh, I felt it. No, I feel it there. I feel very familiar. Yeah. I'm not Italian, but I know I hear the language, and I'm like, it's running through my veins, you know?
Right. Right.
That's interesting. But like you said, so understanding that, you know, if I'm just looking up an astrocartography map of my chart, it's better to have someone guiding you.
There's so much detail. This is where, you know, where it gets interesting, because the general lines, I describe it as fine tuning a radio station. So yes, you'll get a map, and you've got these lines. These lines have a 500-mile wide orb of influence. So I describe it as an AM station, like, you know, how you would drive across the United States, like going across Canada, like all day, you're tuned into the same AM station, right? That's the big lines. But in addition to those big lines, then we have small, what's called Paran latitude lines. We have aspect lines, we have midpoints, we have local space, we have geodetic lines. There's all this other information. And the other lines, I liken them, number one, to, like, okay, you're going to tune in your FM station, right? It's like a fine tune, right? Yeah. So you have a longitude, 500-mile wide longitude, but where is the latitude that's going to work for you on that line? And that's where, and it just takes time, and it takes conversation. And again, so fine tuning into the FM station, and some of these secondary lines, I describe them as operating like a riptide at the ocean, right? So you don't necessarily see it, but you go in and it's like pulling you.
Oh, which is amazing. Yeah, because if you're looking at a chart, you don't always see the riptides. So you're like, well, why is, living here in Florida, making me go broke? And I feel miserable, but
but it's on my Venus line. What happened?
Right. So no, that's fascinating. You say that. Now, remind me though. So if people are needing to find direction and more insight into their astrocartography, their locations and their chart, I think you had mentioned to me there are only 70.
There's 100 people worldwide that are certified.
Okay,
actually
certified.
Officially certified and trained.
Right. So what do we say about, I know there are a lot of I've seen it, lots of YouTubers, lots of people talking about these things, but I do feel like it's more of a surface because they're not looking at your personal chart, right? They're just saying, oh, and if it's in Jupiter with whatever in your sun, I don't know, no, sun and Jupiter can't be together, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so how do people, I guess they call you, right? Get the truth.
Well, what's the question?
No, so there are 100 people certified in astrocartography. So it seems like the best place to go would be to those people certified who understand the concept as deeply as, or I mean, are there people out there who know enough and can probably, is that a hard question?
That's a hard question for me to answer.
Sorry, that's
Joy,
okay.
because I'm sure there are people that are, that are good. And again, honestly, I feel that it's going to come back to your experience, how much you've done it. But I will say also, I have been shocked by the lack of knowledge of some people who say they know astrocartography.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
That's, I know, it's called warning, right? So let me ask you this: when someone's looking for an astrologer or someone to do with their astrocartography, I mean, there are several many out there, many astrologers out there. What would you advise someone like myself, when you're looking for someone to, do a reading for you, certain qualities, and I know it's very personal, right? But maybe a question for people to be able to ask themselves, does this person resonate with me? Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's also kind of a tough question for me to answer because honestly, most people, well, not most, my business always has come from a multitude of sources. It comes from my newsletter. It comes from repeat clients. It comes from people who don't even know me, who find me on the internet and they like my website and they trust me to do business with. I mean, I am deeply appreciative of that. And the only thing I want to add to that is that it's very important that you do resonate with the astrologer. And I had a really kind of bad experience. I did it like a trade a few years ago with another astrologer. Like she wanted to do a trade. And this person gave me, I thought, like the most negative possible reading that I could imagine. I mean, I left that reading feeling like crap.
Oh. How no? Oh no.
My only point is, don't let anybody, and particularly an astrologer, do that.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Well, I imagine, okay, no, I'm glad you brought this up because I know there are negative things in our charts, right? There are. There are negative things every day facing us. So I know you can speak as an astrologer, but if you're, as the client, do we need to go in there with a very hard shell? I mean, I wouldn't
Right.
want to. I
Yeah.
would
With
want
like
to.
a pickaxe or,
Right. No, I would want to go in there a little vulnerable, right? Like, because at this point, it's like I'm kind of opening myself up to this experience, and I think it's really important. But again, so that's why you really need an astrologer who has those sensitivities, or at least that's my style, right? So,
Yeah.
well, and another thing about astrology, I see you're open to, or helping people understand that, what you say is not written in stone, right? But what should a client or someone curious about astrology, how should they, how can they view astrology as, and I mentioned it earlier, as a tool, but, how can we, especially someone who's never looked at their chart before?
Well, again, come with your questions, right?
Oh, okay.
I do ask, especially for my what I call my destiny reading, which is a 90-minute reading that includes both astrocartography and natal astrology. I do ask that they let me know how I can best help them, and I welcome specific questions.
Okay, that helps. So,
You know,
for someone to assume an astrologer is a clairvoyant, is that pushing it? Because I think people have this idea.
I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Go far. No.
I think a good astrologer is intuitive and has some type of clairvoyancy or some type of what would say the clair audience, or has intuitive skills. I do think so.
Well, and I'm certain maybe within their charts somewhere they have that, that spirituality, right? Something.
Some way or the other, that
Yeah.
person has some level of skill, because if you are just a scientist and an astrologer, I think it's kind of boring.
Okay, so if a listener has been to an astrologer and they found it boring,
Yeah.
it might have been too scientific. Well, I would agree with that. Can I ask you though, do astrologers have bad days where they're like, I'm not feeling it, sorry, can't help you today? No, you know what I mean? It's like, are you more in tune certain days than others, or maybe the Mercury retrograde, I don't know, something in the stars?
I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I don't think that happens to me. For some reason, every reading that I do, and I don't do a lot of readings. I only, I limit how many readings per week that I do. I don't do like, sit down, boom, 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 boom. So I am, when I am doing a reading, I am absolutely fully present.
Oh, I like that.
I really am. I've had, maybe if I think back over the years, so we're talking over 25 years, I've probably had maybe, 3 or 4 people that were unhappy. I think I've had to refund my money, but one person actually, specifically that I can remember, contacted me about a year later and apologized because she said I was right.
Well, yeah.
And furthermore, I'm very conscientious about customer satisfaction. If there's anything that I do in the process of working with me as a professional and them as my client, no problems. Somebody wants their money back, I would give their money back. I mean, that's just the way I work.
You're a good soul. No, really. So I'm certain, and I've heard this before from friends who've gotten readings or even, we'll talk about that in a minute, but horoscopes. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I've found that they, people want to hear what they want to hear, right?
That's true.
And it's no, and it can be very difficult to hear the truth. And I will say though, maybe understanding, and we can talk about this too openly with the listeners, because understanding the truth will set you free, right? It hurts, but it'll help.
Well, Joy, what about thinking of it as the process that you are, helping this person to speak their own truth themselves? It's not a process of like, I'm telling you, but it's a process of let's look at it this way.
So is this a process then? It sounds like, so through one sitting or one reading, I'll get some insights, but it will take some work, or it's a process. And then would I come back and check in with you, or is that?
Well, I love it. I love to do coaching, ongoing coaching with people, but
I like that idea.
Whatever level, if it's the one reading or not, but I'm absolutely not dogmatic, and I just really, like I said, it's a dialogue. I want to hear what that person, what's their experience. And then with that said, then I can kind of look into, well, this is what caused it. Is this maybe a pattern? Well, I also work with the dark moon Lilith, and I found the dark moon Lilith to be one of the most reliable pointers of what are the wrong messages you got as a child.
Ooh.
Where do you keep doing yourself in? Because your parents taught you XYZ, taught you this or that, but it was wrong.
Oh, that's powerful. So that's a healing agent right there, right? Helping you to understand. Well, and I will say, again, when I found astrology, I was needing understanding and comfort. I was needing a different view of my parents, because them separating, it turned into kind of like, well, who are they now? Where's my family? Where's my unit? What's happening? And I needed to kind of just start looking at the individual, and that was really empowering. And I do think, I guess getting readings, I did this with my husband too before I married him, just for fun. I did a composite reading. So it was really nice, because I found that, I would have married him anyway, because I knew we were right for each other, but it was together, we were Aquarius. The composite became Aquarius, and I do feel like we're a progressive couple. We're very forward thinking. We're moving ahead in life. And there are other things too, I'm sure. But I love astrology for that reason. And the dark Lilith, that's probably going to help a lot of people.
It's huge.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because Lilith wasn't brought up often to me up until maybe this past year. I heard of Lilith. Well, I've heard of Lilith, I guess, was she Satan's wife or something? I don't know, something. There's some biblical.
Yeah, Lilith is a misunderstood female.
Right. And guess what? My French bulldog's named Lilith.
Oh, darling.
Anyway, no, but I know we don't have too much more time, but I did want to just kind of run people through this idea of, well, first of all, if they're interested in getting a reading, what are things that might hold them back from actually doing it, and how we can see them through that.
Well, I spoke with a guy yesterday, and I spoke with him extensively, and he kept asking me all these questions, like I would, I would answer a question and then he would like desperately think of another question to ask because he was just couldn't make a commitment. And basically, you know, he asked me, why should I choose you over another astrologer? And I said, I want you to choose me because you trust me. And I think trust is the bottom line. I think you want to know that the astrologer is not going to waste your time, and that's
No, it's true. You're right. You're right.
choose what, you know, make a choice. A personal referral is a good way.
Yeah.
You know, somebody that refers you, who trusts your work, and then it's, some people just go with their gut, you know.
Yeah, it can serve you
like,
well, I think. I like the
Yeah.
I like the gut.
Yeah, like I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. Well, and I do feel like this world, and you know, one of the themes I like with all the sense in the world is, you know, we are all in this together, and the more sensory oriented we are, the more aware we are of ourselves, of our inner workings, including, you know, our astrological signs and our charts. I think it helps people, you know, perform and pursue this life in a better way. And I'm very, yeah. Oh, I forgot. We were going to talk about if astrology affects the senses in any way, if there are particular signs that might be more sensitive to that.
I'm thinking about cancers.
Okay. We are in the season of Cancer now, right?
Right.
Will that give us more sensitivity too?
We're in the season of Cancer? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a season. I wrote my newsletter today and it said, you know, Kabbalah teaches that Cancer is a season of finding balance and healing.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and I wouldn't really want to break that down by sun sign. I'm going to break that down by the whole picture.
Okay.
By the, you know, by their personality, because you could have a Capricorn, but you could have a very sensitive Capricorn, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. My son is a very sensitive
There you go.
Capricorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't know it, but he's so sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sweet. Yeah. Well, thank you. And what about horoscopes? People looking at a horoscope on a daily basis, are you?
Well, I'll be honest. I think if you have a good horoscope, I think you kind of develop a relationship with your horoscope. I found, you know, like I haven't done it in a while, but there have been times in the past when I was getting a daily horoscope that kind of like you get into this groove, right? And it fits. It's good.
Okay. And then there are some that don't fit and that aren't good, I'm sure.
Right.
Right. Well, maybe, yeah. And I would look at it as kind of like notes of inspiration or notes of just kind of, hey, you know, look out for this, be aware of this, right? And awareness. So it's great.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to have you come back because I feel like I have so many more questions, but yeah, we are out of time. And Maya,
Thank you, Joy.
You are very insightful and intuitive. And I do hope people that listen to this will, if they haven't gotten a reading, that they would consider it when it's right for them, of course. And there's always a season for this because learning more about yourself is powerful. And astrology has that ability. And Maya,
So my website's the same as my name. It's mayawhite.com.
Perfect.
And it's a huge, gigantic website. I've been posting information and horoscopes there for years and years. And I've thought to streamline it, but the SEO people tell me, no, you know, keep all that content up.
SEO, yes. Yes, I know all about that. So, yes, and also she's on Instagram,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, she posts some really, really insightful, fun things too. So anyway, I am so grateful for your time, Maya. I've learned a lot from you, and I hope people will also understand the power of the stars and the power of an astrologer who truly loves her work and who loves the people she's serving. I feel that
Thank
from
you.
you.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel that
fabulous.
from you.
Just, when you think, like, always remember, and I never forget, like, where I came from, right? Like a miserable, a miserable salesperson and office assistant, so I am always, always in gratitude for what I do. And I never forgotten it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Have a blessed day. Thank you again.
Thanks. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Maya. Thank you. Bye.